Hello again, and welcome back to my workshop. So I have another project that I'm going to be working on here, and I'm using a piece of very heavily spalted sugar maple. This is a board that I milled off a big log a couple years back. It's been drying here in my workshop for the last 2 years. And I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make myself a really nice, super rustic serving tray or charcuterie board. And I think I'll probably actually use this side because the cavity is a lot bigger here. And what I'll do is I'll fill this cavity in with epoxy resin, probably some blue or not entirely sure what color I'm going to go with yet. The other cool feature about this wood is there's all kinds of wood boring insects had bored into the wood at some point in time. This log came from a tree that I cut down. It was a pretty much dead sugar maple tree, and the insects hit it pretty hard. That's not always a bad thing in my opinion, because it gives a lot of character to the wood. So yeah, there's all kinds of little trails and holes in here that what I'll do is I'm going to get all it's almost like a real hard sawdust type residue that they leave behind. I scratched that all out with a little nail or something and try to get it pretty deep, and then I'll fill that in with resin as well. And when I sand this thing down, it's gonna shine up really nice. These darker parts of the wood here, they darken up quite a bit when they're polished, and this should be a really cool piece, I think. Actually, this is going to be a gift for my sister and her fiance. So I'm excited about this. This could be one of the cooler things I've made in recent years. So yeah, we'll just go at it without any real plan, just kind of see how things go. And I'll take you guys along on the journey. Should be fun. So I've been doing some further inspection on this board, and I think I'm probably going to have to cut this down here. One of the primary reasons for that is, let's see if I can get down here. As you can see, that the board has got quite a warp in it, and if I try to use the full length of this board and I surface the board to make it flat, I'm gonna end up losing quite a bit of this board's thickness to flatten that out if I keep that end. Now if I cut some of this off, it's going to shrink up that gap down there, and when I flatten it, I won't lose as much of the board. So I've decided I'm going to trim a good chunk of this off. I think it's going to work out for the best and save me thickness in this wood. So as you can see here, this is the piece that's about to break off, and this would have been a challenge for me anyway. And there's a good crack right here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just doing a straight cut, I'm going to use a jigsaw and kind of cut it roundish, maybe make it a little rough, just so that I can kind of match the existing live edge. So I'm just going to kind of draw a little path here with the pencil, indicating roughly where I'm going to make my cut. Definitely don't want it, or I'm not going to make it totally perfect, because I want it to, in fact, maybe I'll come out like this. Just kind of wing it. So like I said, I'll follow this crack, just kind of cut it down like there. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm probably going to use like a shaping tool, because I don't want it to look perfect. I want to try to maybe give it a fake live edge on this side. And then I'll be able to put two handles like that. It won't be a gigantic board, but I think it'll work out for the best. I think this part was probably going to give me a bunch of hassle if I'd have saved it. And like I said, by cutting this part off, because it's kind of bowed like that, it'll reduce the amount of wood that I have to shave off to make this nice and flat. So yeah, we'll cut that piece off with the jigsaw. So let's do this. So part of the challenge of flattening out these live edge planks, these very oddly shaped planks, is securing it to the CNC table. If you've watched one of my previous videos, you know that right now I'm actually utilizing my CNC machine to do my my slab flattening. Prior to today, I was using carpenter's double-sided carpenter's tape. I was using these kind of whatever you call them. I can't think of it right off the top of my head here. Just to kind of try to hold it in place, and it was always a huge hassle, especially with these warped boards. As you can see, I have these little shims on these two sides here because the board wobbles, and the whole reason why I'm doing this step is to flatten it out so it doesn't have that wobble anymore. So I had to try to find the best spot to be able to plane this down where I'm not going to lose a ton of wood. And so I actually, just yesterday, I got these T-tracks put in here, and these clamps actually just arrived today. So I'm using these for the very first time on this project, and already I feel like this is going to be way better than what I was dealing with before. I should have done this 2 years ago. So I'll go back to my computer, I'll create a surfacing toolpath with V-carve, just try to take off just as little as possible. The high points are going to be here and here. Try to get this as flat as possible, leaving as much material as I possibly can, because I really want to keep a lot of these wood boring trails. And once that's nice and flat, then I'll flip it over, flatten the other side, and we can start. I can start preparing this thing for the epoxy fill. So as you can see, using this to surface boards, non-level boards, is very slow. So one of my next projects is actually going to be to build a router sled so that I can manually do this. I just waste so much time doing it this way. I don't have a joiner or a planer big enough to be able to joint and plane boards this wide. So the reason why you're not hearing anything is because there was a high spot over here and a high spot over there. Most of the time it's going to be wasted, just going back and forth, not cutting anything. If I really wanted, I could probably just move it and hit those high spots, which maybe I should do, because it's only estimated to take 11 minutes, which isn't terrible. I may just let it go instead of fiddling with it. I got a couple other things I can do while this is going. So once I flatten this out, I'm going to probably have to do a couple passes on this, maybe 3 passes. And yeah, then I'll have to flip it over and do the other side. Okay, so I skipped forward a little bit here. I poured the epoxy. What I ended up doing was I did use my little old Dremel tool, and I ended up carving out a little bit of those wormy hole spots that the stuff was just so tough I couldn't get it out with a nail. And actually, I think because I haven't done this a ton, I think I probably just used this from the start. It actually worked out better than I thought it would. And probably would have saved me some time as opposed to just using that nail to dig all that stuff out. So in the future, I'm just going to use that. For the side here, obviously the epoxy would run out and just make a mess. So there I just put silicone. And it's on the bottom as well, just to kind of make a dam for that epoxy resin so that it doesn't run out. And once this is cured, I'll take this Dremel tool and I'll just carve that area out, get rid of all that silicone. I'm actually using tabletop epoxy because it cures quicker. This isn't really that deep, so it should do the job nicely, but as you can see, this should look really cool. One of the reasons why I actually like these, the spalting and the insect boring trails and holes, is often black kind of forms around the edge of the insect trail, or whatever you want to call it. And it gives the epoxy resin a really nice outline. Just adds to the beauty of the piece, I think. So, yeah. Come back in about 24 hours and see if it's hard, and usually I give it a couple of days before I mess with it, even on this tabletop epoxy resin, which cures, you know, depending on the temperatures and stuff, about 24 hours. So, feels pretty cured to me, despite the fact that it's got really cold last night out here. I was kind of concerned that was going to be an issue, but looks pretty good. And you can see the back side. This is where I had the epoxy tape, and I'll peel it off here. That comes off pretty easily. That part's a little bit of a mess over here because of the silicone that I had to use to dam it off on both sides. Otherwise, when I poured that resin, it would have just started pouring out over here. So yeah, it makes a little bit of a mess. Not super ideal, but I'm going to be shaving this part off anyway, so I figured that made it nice and easy. So yeah, as you can see, it didn't really leak much. You can see where it came out a little bit into the tape, but not bad at all. So yeah, I'll let it cure for probably another day or so, and then I'm going to come and plane this down, get all this excess stuff off, and then I'll be able to sand it down to a real fine grit and clean this part up here. I think I mentioned before that, you know, I had a lot of extra that I mixed. I try to find other things I can do with the extra. So here's another piece that I'm going to eventually do, and I just kind of cleaned up the worm trails and stuff, and I just poured the remaining epoxy in this. Obviously, I'm probably going to end up sanding or planing a lot of the stuff off, but I already got a good start on filling these crevices with some of the stuff that would have otherwise gone to waste. So this kind of puts me ahead of the game when I actually want to work on this piece. So yeah, I guess we'll let it cure for another day and come back in a little more than 24 hours. So I almost always have to plane the piece again after I do the epoxy resin because, you know, as the bubbles come to the top, the resin ultimately goes down just a little bit. So then I usually will have ridges where the wood is actually a little bit higher than the resin. So I plane it down again. I get all the excess epoxy resin off that was just kind of all over the place here. The big downside to that on wood like this that has all kinds of boring trails and stuff from the insects is that even by taking off just 1/10 of an inch, it will suddenly reveal more of those trails. Like there, where I started to fill it in there, but that piece right there in the middle there was a little bit deeper into the wood, and now it's been revealed. So what that means, and here's a bunch of little holes that suddenly appeared. What that means is that I gotta work this and get that stuff out, and I'm gonna use the Dremel for that, and then refill all of these cavities that have been revealed by taking 1/10 of an inch off. And what I'll do is I'm just gonna be not so messy with the resin this time. I'm just gonna fill in each little hole that I make here. Try to maybe have a little bit more on top so that when it shrinks down it won't go too deep. And then I'm just going to use the sander to sand off the excess. And obviously it doesn't look too pretty right now, but once that gets sanded down and polished up, its beauty will be restored. So. Yeah, so honestly, I don't know why I ever thought it was a good idea to use a nail. This thing is so much better. Alright, I got hopefully the last of the epoxy resin on here. And in about 48 hours or so, I'll sand the rest of this down. Get it all smoothed out. So I'm getting ready to put a clear coat of epoxy resin on the bottom just to fully seal this thing. There's lots of trails that I carved out on the bottom as well. And I just want to put a clear coat of epoxy on here just to give it a nice seal. Like I said, here's the top. Looks pretty good. It's going to look really good with that clear coat on there. It's going to really bring out the color of the wood. So I basically am just, these are cups from my previous epoxy resin mixes. I save them for purposes like this, so I can have this sitting up above. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the resin over top and just let it kind of just go off the sides. I'll try to get it in there nice. I want the sides and everything coated with it. Typically what I would do on a piece such as this is I wouldn't necessarily use epoxy resin to seal it. I would use like wood wax or something. But because this is has so many like buggy holes in there, I think it'd be easier just to seal the whole thing right up with the resin. Has been applied. I think it looks great, and this is just the bottom. It's funny because the epoxy resin is so clear that I keep thinking that the epoxy resin has sunken down into some of these cavities deeper than it really has, between the clearness of the resin and the light reflecting on some of these cavities. I keep going over them thinking, oh, it's gone down, and I go to film and I'm like, oh wait, no, it's nice and flat. Okay, so I have this totally sanded down. It's sanded to 1000 grit. It's nice and smooth, and I haven't polished it up yet. Actually, what I want to do next is I want to drill the holes for the handles, because what I'm going to do is take this back into the house, the nice warm house, and put the wax on it and polish it up really nice. It's actually about 10 degrees out here right now, so it is very cold. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about my method for installing these handles. With as much work as I've put into this thing already, I don't want to screw holes in here and screw it up. So what I have here is I made myself a little jig so that I know exactly where the holes need to be drilled in the piece. So I don't accidentally drill them too far apart or too close together and essentially ruin this. So basically it's just a scrap piece of plywood that I had laying around, and I measured and drilled the holes through this plywood to verify that, yeah, that's exactly the spacing that I need. I'm notorious for thinking I have things measured properly. The old saying, measure twice, cut once. Well, sometimes I measure twice and cut once, and I still got it wrong. So what this does is it gives me the holes, and I can determine where I want to put the handles. And then I can place my jig right here and, mark exactly where I want to put those holes, and then I can drill them on my drill press and they'll be perfect. So yeah, then I can save this for future projects where I'm going to use the exact same handle, and I can always, double check before I actually drill the holes in here that the other handles that I have match this, and if it doesn't, then I'll make another jig. And I just kind of write down, you know, the rough measurements, you know, according to what the package says. And then I can save it for next time. And, you know, if I make another one of these, I've got this all ready to go. Okay, so I got things lined up just about roughly where I want them. The nice thing about working with live edge, very oddly shaped pieces of wood is that these don't have to be completely perfect. I mean, you can really put them wherever you want. There's no right answer. So I got these roughly where I want them. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So just kind of verify that. That's about where I want that. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. And actually, it's a little, I probably should make a better jig here. These holes don't line up perfectly. So then I'll just go in here and mark where I need to drill my holes. Okay, so I'm going to use the drill press here to drill out the holes. I should have used something slightly different to mark the holes with, because the pencil marking really blends in with the spalting. Okay, so now I just want to make sure I'm on the back side. I have a bigger bit here that I'm going to drill on top of the holes that I just drilled, just a little into the wood. That way the screw head will sink down into the wood a little bit, and it won't scratch up a tabletop surface or counter, wherever it's going to be sitting.